Welcome to the next episode of the Ecom Growth Show. I'm your host, Daniel Coleman, founder of Ecom Triage, co-founder of Catalog Defender. And with me, I've got Nachman. He's the founder and CEO of ConnectBooks, one of the only finance companies in Amazon that I'm aware of that connects directly with Amazon and goes straight into either QuickBooks or, if I'm not mistaken, Nachman, it's Zero as well, yeah?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, cool. Well, welcome to the show, Nachman, and tell us who you are and how you got started.
Sure. So, Dana, first, thank you so much for having me on the show. Really appreciate
Pleasure.
the opportunity. How we got started, what I always tell people what ConnectBooks is different than most other softwares is I'm not a developer and I don't know how to develop. I mean, in 26, we'll see what AI is going to do. I don't even know, but it's moving fast. Anyway. So I'm actually an accountant and I have a master's degree in accounting. I went to school for accounting and I used to be a CFO and then I wanted to open my own business. So I started a bookkeeping company that focuses on small to medium-sized businesses. And then I started working with some e-commerce sellers and I was going to Amazon, pulling all different type of reports and pulling it into Excel, doing a bunch of pivot tables and then using different tools to import the data to QuickBooks. While I was doing that, I was spending a lot of time and I came up with this idea and when I originally was thinking of ConnectBooks, I wasn't thinking about selling it as a SaaS. I was looking more to expand my bookkeeping business because I was constantly thinking, how can I grow my bookkeeping company? And I figured Amazon is a good space because I spent so much time downloading all these different reports for this particular seller. If I can automate this work and do copy paste for a bunch of other sellers, I'll be able to expand my business, spin around reports much faster, give better pricing. So that's where I started exploring the idea of building a software. Originally, when I built ConnectBooks, I didn't build it to sell as a SaaS. I built it really for myself. That's how it started. But as I was getting in the building process, I started talking to a lot of different sellers. And they're like, hey, we have a different bookkeeping company that we have a relationship for the last 10 years. And, we would love to use the product, but not really interested in the bookkeeping service. And then other guy told me, oh, I have an in-house bookkeeper. So we'd love to use the product, but not the service. So what we ended up doing is I ended up taking the company and we split it in two. So we have a bookkeeping company and then we ended up building ConnectBooks as a SaaS. So other bookkeeping companies could buy a service or if somebody has an in-house bookkeeper, they can buy our tool as well. And then what was interesting was that the way ConnectBooks started originally was, our bookkeeping company is called Bottom Line Management. So Bottom Line Management was a bookkeeping company and we were looking to grow the bookkeeping company. So we built a tool. Then we split them, independently. And then what started happening is eventually was that a lot of people who were using ConnectBooks, let's say they were having hard times getting everything set up because ConnectBooks is a bookkeeping automation tool, but you still need a bookkeeper behind it to do 20% of the work. We automate around 80%. So instead of spending I don't know how many hours a month, we can bring it down to 3-4 hours a month, but you still need somebody to put in those couple of hours. So what ended up happening was that a lot of people would call up, I still have to do this. I still have to reconcile in bank and oh, it's complicated. And they're like, oh, you guys do bookkeeping? Oh, just do the whole thing. So today, actually, it's a little funny. It's either you can take your tool and do it yourselves, or we'll do a full bookkeeping service for you, which basically completely hands off. And what ended up happening was that our Bottom Line Management company basically turned into a bookkeeping company just for Amazon sellers. We don't really promote it so much by shows, you probably never even knew about it. But I'm saying is when customers call in or we see people having hard times, you're like, hey, by the way, we can just take the whole thing off your plate. And they're like, oh, cool, just do it. So today we run both companies together. Sorry?
Yeah. I've known you for years. I didn't know you also did bookkeeping. I only knew about ConnectBooks.
Yeah, it's a different type of business. It's more, one is a SaaS, it's a software, it's different. And one is more of a service-based business. And we've been pretty busy. And it's also in terms of scaling, it's like scaling an agency, right? You can't take on 50 accounts in 1 month. On the software, you could. So, and in terms of the bookkeeping, we focus a lot on clarity and making sure stuff are done right. We really work hard to understand the client's business. If you don't understand their products and all those stuff, then you're not going to do the proper bookkeeping, meaning the way we plan on doing it. So in terms of that, we do it, but I'm saying, but primarily, meaning the way the bookkeeping went, it's funny because the bookkeeping originally was never e-commerce. It was just we wanted to grow it. And then eventually because of the software, the whole bookkeeping switched into an e-commerce bookkeeping company.
Got it. Well, I've got a few questions prepared for you that I'm going to rapid fire go through. You ready?
Let's go.
All right. You've been in the e-com space for about 10 years. Are you finding that sellers are still making money?
Yeah. What I say is COVID was easy days. And I'll tell you how the market evolved a little bit. Back in the days, I'll say like in 2016 and 2017, you could have just gone to Alibaba, pulled a product off the shelf, listed on Amazon and sell. Those
Yep.
days are gone. Now, in COVID, there was also a big rush, because economy is changing, as things are changing. The way it works today is that you really have to solve a problem. And what I've seen, it's like that, not just in Amazon, it's like that in every space. Real estate is slow, construction is slow.
Yep.
It's a lot of different spaces. Also, like there's a lot of like service-based businesses that popped up in COVID that are all gone already. So in today's day and age on Amazon, like just going to Alibaba and buying a product and listing it on Amazon, that's not going to work. And I've spoken to certain customers, like he said that we spend a lot of time these days on product innovation. Like we're actually innovating. We're not just products. That's really where the money lies these days in terms of innovation, right? If you want to bring in a product, you want to do competitor research, you want to understand why this product is not working well and why your product is going to be better and how you solve for the problem. Like, so let's say even today, if you want to open up an agency to serve Amazon sellers, you can't just open up an agency these days. There's so many. But if you have a good niche and you know how to explain like why you're good, what makes you different, how you're better than the competitor, then you'll be able to get somewhere. And the same to goes for your product, and same to goes for us as well in our business. And it's everything like that. You have to really be innovative today.
Cool. And what do profitable sellers do differently as compared to ones that you find are struggling a bit more?
They know the numbers. Can't tell you more about that. I've been with sellers working already for 8 years. And the beauty of having a bookkeeping company plus a software is that on the bookkeeping company, we get way more involved. Our bookkeeping services ranges from different tiers. Our lowest tier is more like where you want like a monthly summary. So basically once a month, we just go through your bank account, credit cards, reconcile and get the books up to date. But then we have most of our clients are more in our bigger tier packages where we basically serve to them as like an in-house bookkeeper. So we basically pay their bills. The vendors reach out to us directly. Like we set up different email addresses, different stuff. And we work with them on a day-to-day basis. So like when they don't have cash in the bank, we know about that because it's a struggle for us because we can't pay vendors. So we live much more day-to-day with sellers. And a lot of times we have customers that come to us like, look, we're tight in cash or we're not making money. How can you help us? And this problem existed in 2018. In 2020, maybe it didn't exist because there was like a bunch of funding at that point and people were blindsided. But in 22, the problem came back. So the people who are always successful were people who really understood the numbers well. And the benefit of understanding the numbers is that a lot of times there's so many moving aspects. And when something goes a little bit wrong, if you know your numbers on a monthly basis, you spot it right on and you have to also take action. And action is not easy. Sometimes you'll have to do stuff. So let's say I'll give you one case study that I did with a client. He was not making money and he calls me up and this is a very interesting story. We were working with him and he wasn't super responsive. And there was a list of things that I wanted to get done, which I was never able to get done. For example, let's say landed cost. So when you bring in a container from overseas, one of the things you want to make sure is that you take the shipping cost and the duties, which today can be through the roof, and you want to apply to the product itself so that you understand what your true cost of goods sold is. And you want to make sure after all Amazon fees and ad spend and landed cost that you're still making money. And we were having a little hard time getting that done. We a couple times told him, give us the POs, allocate the containers, and we'll do all the work. Just give us a little guidance here. And then one day he tells me, Nachman, I'm canceling your service. I'm like, why are you canceling my service? He's like, we lost so much money last month. I said, okay, but you're not going to know how much money you lost the next month. Like, you're not going to know what's going on. He's like, who cares? There's no money in the bank. We're just losing money. So, I don't care. I said to him, for the last few months, I've been trying to get through to you to discussing these problems that we haven't been able to do. And I said, and because you haven't given me this information, I was never able to give you a clear picture of what's happening in your business. I said, how about we do a different setup? Let's try it out for another 3 months, but you have to be serious about it this time. You have to give me everything that I request within 24 hours. And I can, with the proper insights, I can show you how to pull this business into a profit. And guess what? This gone by over a year. He has gone from losing money to making money, nice money. Okay. He's making way more than 6 figures profit, not talking about sales. Mm-hmm. And the bank account has a lot of money. There's always money to pay bills. Things are going properly. Like, let's say, I'll just give like a common example. One of the problems were that because landed cost was never done, he never realized what it really cost him to import. He thought it was cheap. And then he realized that he's really breaking even. He had a different issue. He never properly accounted for his overhead in his warehouse. He had a product that he was selling on Amazon at 10% profit. And he was like, I'm making money, it's 10%. I said, but your overhead is like 15%. So I said, if you don't hit 20%, then there's no here. So here's where, like I say, taking action. What did it mean take action? So we spent like 2 months digging through his data, setting everything up right, and really coming out with the clear numbers, because he also had a challenge. Certain products that were made overseas don't have any overhead because he was utilizing Amazon's shipment, meaning he was sending it from China directly to FBA. So in that case, he was saying, oh, this has no overhead. So we had to like break up his Amazon account. And in ConnectBooks, we have that ability to like categorize and set up different departments. Let's call departments. So we made a local department which goes to his warehouse and gets prepped. And then we made a different department that would come from China. And then we set different margins based on different departments. And because the ones coming from China, we were okay with the lower margin because he didn't have any overhead on it. The ones coming to the US had more overhead. And we basically worked out a lot. Now, what happens is once he understood what the margin is, now was his job, because I'm not an Amazon seller. If yes, I wouldn't be a bookkeeper. But once his job was to understand, okay, I have to hit this margin. Let me see how I can make this work. And he spent a month, and believe me, he cracked it. The problem was that up until now, he never knew. He was always in the dark. He was thinking that 10% was good. When I explained to him where it has to be and where he has to go, he sat down, he took a couple of days, just focused straight on this, and he started cracking the code. You want to really know what it was? We started raising prices. And that's why I say a lot of times people are a lot of times very scared to take action. I've had this many times. But when you come to a point where like you're going to shut your business or stay afloat, you're like, okay, there's no other option. Let me do it. Certain prices, we streamlined certain ads. I don't know how he did, but that was all on him. But the result is sales dropped like 20%, but profit is through the roof. Profit is up. Cash is here. There's never any issue paying vendors. There's always money to count. Things are moving very nice, clearly. What I'm saying of this story is that if you're on top of your game, you understand your numbers. And I'll tell you even more. 25 was a rough year, especially when all of a sudden one day came out in the news, tariffs are 50%, 55%. I had clients that had over $1 million in POs coming in that week. Okay. If you have $1 million in POs, now you have another $500,000 in tariffs. That's a lot of money. Most people are not late, and most big businesses, even somebody who makes $5 to $6 million a year in profit. Okay. So talking about like $60, $70 million sellers, nobody leaves $4 million in the bank account just because maybe something. They take that money, they buy investments, they do other stuff where they invest in their business. Like normal budgeted businesses know, okay, we have $1 million coming in. Let's say we have $2 million in the bank. We're fine. So we'll leave $1 million for cash flow. But all of a sudden you got to start shelling out another $1 million for tariffs, like 600,000. Then a week later, more POs. It was chaos. But one of the things since these sellers were really on top of their numbers, they understood what the impact was, and they knew how to, and they reacted right away. And some of them, the margins didn't hit, meaning these tariffs at the end of the day got passed down to the consumer, and they right away worked with the problem and how to deal with it. Those are the ones who are going to stay up. So the people who knew the numbers back in 2018, the people who knew the numbers in 22, the people who know the numbers in 25, and every time they see, and they get it also they get the numbers on time. It's very important that when the month closes, you have your numbers, not like 6 months later, you're looking at old numbers, because at that point it's irrelevant. So if you get your numbers in time, you have everything up on time, you understand exactly where to pivot, how to pivot, and you just got to react.
Cool.
You got to be ahead of the game.
All right, cool. All right, next question is this. How do sellers stay cash flow positive? Because you were just talking about that, but how?
Yeah, so this is something that is funny because I love this question. And it's something that nobody in the industry in the last 8 years has been talking about. I've been talking about it for the last 6 months. Maybe I should make more noise about it.
Okay, well, make some noise right now, man.
Yeah, it's super important. And I always tell people is that everybody's always busy looking at all these different analytical tools, like how much money are we making on our products? Like, for example, I'm selling a product for $100 on Amazon. Amazon fees, let's say $40 after all the commission and everything. Let's say product costs me $40. I'm making $20 profit.
Yeah, but you're not.
Everybody's right.
Not really.
That's what everybody's doing. And to tell somebody like, today, how much money are you making after all the fees is pretty simple. There's so many tools out there. I mean, ConnectBooks is just one of them, right? There's so many different analytical tools which are going to take all your fees and break it up by item so you really understand. But the real challenge that sellers face these days, and this is where I've had many stories, was cash flow. Profit and cash flow are two different stuff. So I'll tell you a story that I had with a seller. We had a seller that was doing $22 million in sales, and their net income was $1.4 million. That was after overhead, after payroll, and after the owner's pay. Everything was included in their expenses.
Jeez.
So at a glance, you say 1.4 million net income. Beautiful, no? After that,
Not really, but
I mean, look, they 1.4 after the owner's taking out W-2s on their and salaries and all that. That was extra money left over.
okay.
It's nice. It's nice.
It's not.
It's nice again.
Yeah.
But the problem was there's no money in the bank. So
Mm.
the 1.4 million was not in the bank. So the question is, where did that money go?
Mhm.
And every time they had to pay a vendor, they were always strapped for cash. They're always strapped. We made analysis on their business, and what we saw was that in the beginning of the year they had $3 million worth of inventory, and at the end of the year they had $6 million worth of inventory. So what does that mean? That means they bought additional $3 million worth of inventory more than they sold this year. Meaning if the beginning of the year was 3 million and the end of the year would have been 3 million, means that all the purchases that were bought this year were basically sold. But if the beginning of the year was 3 million, end of the year is 6 million inventory, means besides what they bought and sold, they stayed over with additional $3 million.
Would they be perhaps trying to purchase ahead of time for, let's call it 2026,
No,
and have that expense on the books?
No. What happened was, no, they're not they're not that smart. Let's go that way. Some people, I wouldn't say sound like smart, but I would say some people are very financially driven, like they come up with hacks.
Yeah.
They're not that kind of people. They're straight shooters, like as straight as it gets. They had, one of the problems were that they hired a certain employee to help them out with the purchasing, and they made some sort of commission structure that they would pay the guy based on deals and stuff. But here's the problem. Problem is that they didn't have proper insight of their inventory. Now, what do you mean they didn't have proper insight? Of course, they had an inventory software set up. Of course, they knew exactly how much to have per SKU. But they didn't understand that when a product lays in your warehouse for more than a year, that's a loss. If you buy a product, let's say for $200,000, that does not sell, that's a loss.
Mm-hmm.
And that $200,000, you're not seeing in any of these analytical tools that you're looking at. It's because the product never sold. So when you look at how much profit you're making in Amazon after all your fees, one thing is not there: the inventory that never sold.
Right. That's true.
The biggest drainer in reality, it's not just for e-commerce. It's any inventory-based business. Any inventory-based business that has inventory that's sitting around and not being sold is tying up cash. So what happened was, in that case, we told the client, hey, you see, you have $6 million worth of inventory. You purchased this additional $3 million. So he was like, okay, so can you tell me which products are laying here more than like 6 months? And I didn't have any visibility in that. And I said, no, because I tried. I was like, oh, this product has $600,000 worth of stock. He's like, we just bought it last month. Oh, this product. He has like 4,000 listings, like 4,000 active SKUs. It was really hard. One of the things that ConnectBooks built out recently, our newest addition, is we have ConnectBooks. Besides that, we connect the data from Amazon to QuickBooks, and we also do profitability by SKU, where we give you the full analytics. And we have a unique way, which is very different than most other tools do it. But one of the other things we also recently rolled out is our inventory platform. Now, our inventory platform, we're not like a warehousing or logistics. My background is accounting. I'm a good accountant. Mm-hmm. The idea of the inventory is more from a finance perspective, meaning we offer a lot of functionalities like multiple warehousing, and we have a lot of good features. But the real goal is to understand your inventory from a health perspective. Is my inventory healthy? Do I have too much inventory, or do I have too little inventory? So in this case, one of the things that we built out is called an inventory age. Now, our inventory age also gives you the dollar value, not just the quantities. It will show you like how much quantities you have in stock, and the next column is the value of it. So in this case, if somebody has, let's say, $6 million worth of inventory, we'd pull by age, and we can do like 30-day intervals, and we can show you right away, see this how much inventory is laying in more than 5 months. This how much inventory is like more than 8 months. This how much inventory is like more than 9 months. And then what your job is, you got to start liquidating that inventory. So I, for example, let's say was working with a customer, and I pulled the inventory age, and I showed him a certain SKU, which it costed him, he had big inventory. He had inventory like of 7 million. And that guy actually flips his inventory very fast.
Mhm.
But he had a particular SKU, which was not moving fast. I showed him that you have $400,000 of that SKU that's laying in more than a year, and it's in your local warehouse. And he's like, I was like, you really still have an FBA, like another, I don't know, a few hundred pieces, but you're having your local warehouse 400,000 of this. I said, why don't you just get rid of it? So he's like, what should I do? I said, if you can just liquidate it, like I said, this inventory is worth 400, right? If you can, let's say, even liquidate it for 350, meaning this, because you have no Amazon fees in it. It's not like you have to make a removal order. If you have to make a removal order, it's a whole different problem. But if it's in your local warehouse, just take it and get rid of it. You'll recoup your cash. Even if you take a $50,000 hit, you're still better off than tying this up for another year. So the real idea is that with any inventory-based business, the biggest, what I call the number one silent killer, is inventory. And I'll go into I'll explain on a little deeper level. And I always tell to my customers, when you need to, let's say, contact a new agency, or you want to even get a bookkeeping company, everybody loves to negotiate, right? Oh, you charge me too much. You got to give me a better price. Got to give me a better price. But when I find like a product that I want to sell to you, and I say, hey, you want to buy this for 50,000, and you're thinking, oh, I can sell this for 100. You're not really at that point thinking of negotiating. Why? Because where's your mind? Your mind is focused on the profits. Your mind is not focused on it doesn't look to you like an expense. It looks to you like an investment. So you're like, hey, if I buy this at 50, I sell it for 100. When you want to negotiate with an agency, you're like, hey, it's costing me like $5,000 a month. Maybe I can find somebody for $4,000, or like you're trying to negotiate. So you're trying to save. So the problem is with inventory is that people buy it and with the mind to sell it and make a profit. The problem happens is that a lot of times it just ends up sitting around and they never sell it. And that's a complete $50,000 loss. So the real thing is where sellers need to go, and inventories didn't. But I always tell people also, when you run your financials, your biggest asset on your balance sheet is going to be your inventory. Your biggest expense in your P&L is going to be your cost of goods sold. You want to make sure you know those numbers cold. You want to make sure you understand those numbers well. So what we have been working on, and this is something that, that's what I was saying before, profit is not cash flow. You can make a lot of money on Amazon, but if your inventory is not like efficient, then you're not making money. And I want to give the audience a real good tip. You should look at your finance and look how much cost of goods sold was for 1 month. And you should never have more than 3 months of stock. I know it takes like a month sometimes to get into FBA. So like a starting point, I always tell people never have more than 90 days of stock. Now, if you look at your P&L, when you ask your bookkeeper to give you a P&L, if let's say your cost of goods sold is, let's say, $300,000, then your inventory should not be more than 9. Be a starting point. That's where you want to start. And if you're carrying, let's say your cost of goods sold is 300, you're carrying inventory of 2 million. No, you got problems. And that's where you need to really start digging into. And I'll just say one more thing.
What if this, Nachman? What if I got 20% off by buying that $3 million worth of inventory?
The question really is how long is it going to take you to sell? Okay, this is going to tie up your cash. And cash is not unlimited. Everybody busts at some point. The only one who's not busting is the American government. That ceiling just keeps on raising. They're printing. They just keep on raising. But unless, if you're not the American government, at some point you're going to get tied up in cash. So you have to understand that if you're going to buy a product, let's say the product investment is 100,000, and this is going to take you 6 months to sell. So sometimes if you have a use case, like I actually worked with a certain customer that has a very big inventory. Crazy numbers of inventory. Now, when I confronted him about it, was his response was that I buy specific products that I have to buy the whole stock, and it takes me a year to sell. Now, he has the ability to lay out that cash for a full year. So he's like, you're right that I shouldn't be buying more than 3 months, and I try to do that, but if I have to buy this, I have to. And if that's your business case, where you have a use case where you have to buy this particular product 6 months worth of stock, okay, so you'll tie up your cash for 6 months. But if not, and I always tell people is the best thing that a person could always do is look back at your past. Even as a person, right? If you want to grow, you want to do, right? When you make your business goals, your business plans, you want to look back at 25 and what did I do in 25 that made that I shouldn't hit my goal? Like if you set a goal for 26, you have your quarterly goal. So if you have a goal to hit a certain number, let's say, for example, what I would do is if I purchase a product and I anticipate that this product will sell out in 3 months, and then at the end I see it didn't, then I have to see, why did I think that way? what went wrong, and how can I make sure not to make the same mistake again. But if you have a particular use case, then you're right. But most times, most sellers are just like not even thinking. They're just buying, 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 because that's what they have to do. And then all of a sudden they find themselves with extra inventory. And I want to add on one thing. This is important. I love Costco. Costco has a 12x turnover. 12x turnover means that they spin their inventory 12 times a year. And that means on average, a product doesn't lay on Costco shelf more than 30 days.
Yeah. Wow.
And Walmart, by the way, which, when Walmart was founded, they were like the first one to really utilize software the right way. And they always had like every hour, they would take all their inventory and it would go back to headquarters. Every store would have like a satellite. You're talking about in the 60s.
Mhm.
They would have like a satellite on every store, which would send all the inventory data. It was probably still working some MS-DOS, or it was before Windows. They were working some application that would send all this data back to headquarters, and they would, work on that. Walmart, okay, so Walmart carries a lot of different type of items at Costco. Costco, and this is very surprisingly, Costco I think only has like between 3,500 to 4,000 SKUs. I mean, if you look at Costco, like they'll have a whole rack of toilet paper, like a whole rack of
Yeah.
paper towel. Like they carry
Yeah.
like certain basics, and they don't have too many things to choose from. Walmart,
Mhm.
for example, has more of a complex inventory. They carry like 250,000 different SKUs, right? If you
Yeah.
go into a Walmart store, especially like a superstore, you'll see like a bunch of different products. But Walmart has an 8x turnover. It means they flip their inventory 8 times a year. So if you do 12 divided by 8, I think it's like around 45 days, something lays on
Mhm.
the shelf, which is super
Yeah.
impressive. So
Yeah.
what I'm trying to highlight is that the big boys, and if you want to copy them, they're super on top of their inventory.
Yeah.
And right away, if they see something doesn't move, then they
It's
figure out
out.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Cool. Well, this has been super enlightening. Nachman, I want to thank you for coming on to the show. If someone wants to reach out to you, how do they get a hold of you?
The best way is just by visiting our website, connectbooks.com, and just go to connectbooks.com. You can schedule a demo, and we have great people there. I join a lot of times demos. I like to meet customers, and talk to them and hear right away what their problems are and see how we can help them. On our website, we also have live chat that we can get back to you right away and help you out. But the best way is just by visit our website, connectbooks.com, schedule a demo, and, we'll get back to you.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Nachman, and I will see you at the next show.
Thank you so much. See you. Hope
All
to
right.
see you in Vegas.
Yep. See you there.